All right, today we have Kelly joining us on the Shift Happens podcast. So, welcome in. I'm excited to talk with you today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here, Kayla.
All right, so you guys know the deal by now. We're going to start before her shift happens moment. So, Kelly, can you take us back to the version of you before everything crashed? Like, what did life look like when you were juggling the job and the six-figure business and just pushing? What did it look like? What did it look like?
Pushing. Yeah. I was working full time. I was teaching at that point. I'd already started to have a few tiny little health issues, but nothing that was taking me out. I was on fire in the business. I was loving that. I had a full team. I grew exponentially quite quickly. I needed to have a team in order to keep working full time, but I was having a lot of fun. That went on for about a year and a half. Mom of two, married, working a lot though, like working, a good 14 to 16-hour days just because it was
Right.
getting a business off the ground. I launched, in the middle of it. But I was doing all the things that I'd been doing for 20 years. I've always been kind of a go-getter, ladder climber, kind of corporate girl. So, and always had two jobs, right? Like right
Yep.
from young, right through, there was barely a time I didn't have two jobs or wasn't in school at the same time. So that's what was happening right before I went to Europe and it all fell apart.
Yes, your body literally was like, nope. So, when did things start to fall apart? Take us into that Europe trip.
Yeah, I was still feeling okay before we went, and we were going over there to pick up my daughter, and it was our family, and I was so excited. We were going for 2 weeks, and I worked right up until we left, handed the business off to the team, and we got there and still doing okay. And then I had noticed some weight gain. I had had joint pain for quite some time, but I noticed it was getting a bit worse. Weight gain, lots of appetite, some weird things that were happening, but I just figured I was just too busy to eat, didn't care. And then when we got there, about a weekend, right as we got on the cruise, actually, because we kind of toured Europe first, I started gaining weight exponentially, like so much so that the clothes that I bought for the cruise didn't fit. It was really, and it was one of those things where I kept thinking, can anybody see this happening, or is it just me?
Yeah.
And I literally gained, I think it was something like 13 or 14 pounds during that
Wow.
week. And I wasn't eating crazy. I wasn't drinking really. And it was odd. But on top of that, I developed I'd had a cough for a while, like a lung thing happening, but it wasn't that bad. Well, when I came back, I could barely breathe. I was having heart palpitations, just a lot of things going on at one time. And the weight gain, obviously, but it was the lungs that were sort of taking me out. And so it was right during that week that everything sort of blew up. And then
Yeah.
when I came back, I ended up, going and starting my 2-year doctor journey.
Oh, yeah. I'm in that journey right now of doctor visits and scans and appointment after appointment after appointment. And I feel
Mm-hmm,
like it can
mm-hmm.
really just start to mess with you and be like, am I ever going to find answers? Did you feel like that? Like, what is going on with me? Why can't somebody tell me what's going on?
Oh, I felt that way for I think it was a year, and it was because nobody knew what was wrong with me, but my
Yeah.
symptoms were not. They weren't really anything that went together. So I had I went and saw a lung specialist. I saw a cardio. I know they all have real names: respirologist, a cardiologist, a gynecologist, a urologist, like all the gists I could
Yeah.
possibly find. A sleep doctor. I can't remember what their title is. So I just kept going to all these doctors and getting all this medicine, anxiety medication, sleep medication, and still not piecing anything together about what was actually going on. And as the time was going on, I was off work. I had to go off work. I
Yeah.
stepped out of the business. I was so fatigued, I couldn't even really get out of bed. And then that leads to, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but, as someone that's identified with her career and success my whole life, that led to depression pretty quickly, right?
Right.
Because, I'm sick. I can barely get out of bed. My brain, oh, and the biggest one, I didn't even talk about this, was the brain fog that was happening,
Oh,
the
yeah.
complete memory loss. Yeah. Trouble talking. I was convinced I had early onset dementia, all the things, right?
Yes.
So, you put all those together in a package and it's not really a package. It just doesn't really make sense. It took a year to figure out that it was menopause, which is
Wow.
the ironic part of the story. Yes. Yeah. And that wasn't even through a doctor that I figured that out. So every time I went, I was told over and over again, I was just too fat. So my sleep
Oh,
doctor told me I was too fat. My heart doctor told me I was too fat. And the respirologist said I was having trouble breathing because I was under 200 pounds. Like, it's not even like this
right.
immense weight gain, blew me up. So that was interesting as well, was just their take on it. And every single one asked me about menopause. And all they really, and we can talk freely about any kind of menopause.
Yeah.
All they really asked was, when's the date of your last period? Oh, you're in menopause. Okay. And then we just move on. And, everybody associates menopause with hot flashes. And they asked me if I was
Oh,
having those. And I said, I don't think so, not really. And so that ended the conversation every time with all of them,
yeah.
which is weird because, cardiac issues with women in menopause are like the number one killer, number one thing women die from in the menopause age. So even my cardiologist didn't clue in when I was near heart failure. So it was a long year.
That's scary at the same time because you're going through this health issue. Nobody's giving you solid answers. And they're, on top of that, they're blaming it on the fact that you're overweight. And you're like, that was a symptom of mine. It's not like I've been this way for a long time. Like, there are dots and you guys are not connecting it.
Hmm. And I didn't either, though. I had no idea.
Right.
I would never have even guessed that all of the stuff that was happening to me was menopause. And in fact, I had already been diagnosed with fibromyalgia.
Okay.
I think it was 23, so 5 years before. So in perimenopause now,
Yeah.
now that I know what that even means. And I don't actually have it. So like I'm off the medication for all that, all the joint pain's gone. So that's something that women commonly get diagnosed with in
Yeah.
perimenopause because they're not near menopause. So, but then they have all these weird things wrong with them again that don't really go together. And so
Right.
you get fibromyalgia and some joint pain pills and maybe some anxiety medication and off you go. And so that's what I sort of survived on for 5 years until my estrogen really tanked.
Wow.
I even asked my doctor to do a hormone panel
Oh, yeah.
when I started to kind of guess what was going on. And his response was, well, why would you want to do that? And I said, well, I'm in menopause. And he said, well, then we already know that. And I said, but, like, don't we need to know what kind of levels are happening? Can
Right.
we get something for it? Yeah. He says, oh, no, we're not going to give you hormone therapy. It causes cancer. Yeah. I was like, oh, okay, well, we don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then I left and I started doing my own research after that because, it was actually my friend that clued me in that I might be complications of menopause. And then it was literally the book, The New Menopause, that saved my life. I credit that book for helping me to finally get on a path. But even the path to treatment was disastrous once we figured out what it was. But I think from start to finish in that, I think it was like 10 months before menopause was even considered as being part of the problem. So it was a long 10 months and I was steadily going downhill through the whole thing.
Right. Now, I know
Yeah.
you're never supposed to ask a woman her age. However, when it comes to menopause, I feel like we usually put it into a certain age. So, what was like the age you were while you were going through this?
So I'm 49 now and I was in full blown menopause at 47. So that's when it
Okay.
happened. So it is pretty young. Yeah.
Yeah.
To be in full blown menopause at 47 is young. Maybe another reason why it wasn't really, so you're in it based on your last period, but you're young, you'll be good, right? That kind of
Yeah.
thing. Yeah. So, and then when I did the work backwards to even think about all the stuff that happened
Ooh.
before that, I blamed my cognitive issues on a concussion I had in 2015. But I kept getting worse, and I'm thinking, is that really how a concussion works? And I
Right.
started to
Yeah.
do a little bit of, yeah, I started to do a little bit of research on concussions and brain health and retraining your brain, not realizing that is a really big problem with women in perimenopause, moving into the menopause transition. And it was so bad that I couldn't work because I couldn't teach. I couldn't
Right.
remember anything. Nothing would come out. Yeah. was pretty scary.
Yeah, all those different symptoms happening at the same time, and you're just like, what is going on? So once your friend kind of clued you into the fact that this could be something menopause related, and you read that book, what kind of like clicked for you or shifted for you in that moment of like, oh, I understand what's happening now?
So what happened was is I went back to my doctor and I still asked for the hormone panel just
Yeah,
to know. I just
right.
wanted to know, right? And so he said, sure. So he did it. And I had no estrogen. Like I was like,
Mm.
I think it was like at the very lowest it could be. And so at the same time, someone mentioned this book to me and I'm like, well, I'm desperate. And then I read it and it was literally like, I don't know which, I always say I'm going to remember this chapter and I never do, but there's a chapter where it talks about the symptoms of menopause. And I think there's like 47 of them in there.
Oof,
And
wow.
I literally experienced over 30 within that year. And so then I started to do more research on, so the book then goes into talk about what lack of estrogen does to your body. And then I read Estrogen Matters. And then I just started reading more and more about, the detriments. And then also about, does hormone therapy cause cancer? you know,
Right,
like,
right.
right. Yeah. Yeah. So then it was a battle to get treatment after that. So even when we know what it is and we know what might help, I still couldn't get it because he didn't want to give it to me.
Right.
Yeah. So,
That's the
yeah.
hardest part. And I know we were talking a little bit before we got on about finding a good doctor for you. And unfortunately, it can be a hard thing, especially when your doctor's not advocating for you in a way that you need or you think that they would. Like, for instance, when you asked for that hormone panel first, he's like, no. And then you go back and they're willing to do it. And it's like, why couldn't we have just done it the first time that I asked? I'm advocating for myself, I'm asking for something. Why am I being told no, you know?
Yeah, hormone panel tests get a weird vibe. Like they have a weird vibe, I think, with people because in perimenopause, I guess, it doesn't tell you a lot. Like it'll sort
Yeah.
of tell you maybe where you are, and the way it was explained to me is that it's not like estrogen and progesterone have a level they need to be at for you to function, right? Like we know blood pressure should be 120 over 80.
Yeah.
It's not quite like that because menopause and estrogen affects every woman differently with a myriad of symptoms differently. And so I don't know, I think for me, it just spurred me to keep looking
Right.
into what my options are. I'd literally tried everything at that point. I had the CPAP machine. I had the heart
Yeah.
pills. I was on blood pressure medication, anxiety, I had it all. And I just kept getting more medicine. And I thought, I was starting to learn more about the natural way of healing things,
Yeah.
and was starting to see a naturopath. So I pieced together my care with a pharmacist that had been trained in hormone health and menopause, who gave me a prescription to talk to my doctor about. I got denied. So then I also went to a naturopath who specialized in women's health, who sort of backed it up, and then went back to my doctor and still got denied.
Ay,
And
ay,
then,
ay.
Kayla, I'm not going to lie, it got to the point where I was so depressed by not, because at this point, some other things in
Right.
my life had happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't talked about that. And so finally, I just said to him one day, I just said, I'm here and I'm telling you I'd rather be dead than keep going through this. So
Mm.
if you can't give me hormone therapy, then you can live with that, because I had quit drinking. I
Right.
was completely clean eating. I wasn't doing anything, wasn't doing anything. I worked out like 3 or 4 times a week, right?
Yeah.
'Cause, I was trying to do all the natural things and nothing was helping. And my naturopath was like, some women don't have a choice but to go on hormone therapy. But
Right.
naturopaths in Canada can only prescribe so much. You need your doctor to give you that prescription. Yeah, it's
Yeah, and
tough.
that's so frustrating, especially when the doctor's like, well, this causes cancer. So you're like, well, then what am I supposed to choose here? Am I going to get the hormone therapy that I'm being told I need? Or am I going to trust you that you're telling me that it causes cancer? So, wow, like what? How did that even work out for you and doing the hormone therapy?
Well, and I was worried because my mom had died of breast cancer young. She had only
Ugh.
died, a couple of years ago from breast cancer. And they say that if you have breast cancer in your
Yeah.
family, then hormone therapy can cause it. So I just did my part and did a ton of research, and I
Yeah.
talked to people that know, right? Doctors I hate to say it, but a lot of doctors don't know they get their 15 minutes of menopause in school.
Right.
They remember the study from 2001 or whenever that study was done. And then that's sort of it. They don't brush up on, what all of the new things now they are. It's
Yeah.
really happening now, which is great. And then to me, it was, I couldn't live like that anymore.
Right.
I had lost my job, my business. I was almost losing my business because the team was running it, but I mean that can only go on for so long. I was depressed. I almost got divorced. Because I was just so angry at life, and
Right.
I was just your hormones are out of whack. You're an
Yeah.
angry woman. Yeah, and so I just said to him, I'd rather either be dead, have breast cancer, or anything, than not have whatever is happening fixed. And so that was sort of the catalyst moment that we just decided to go for it.
And I'm assuming that had a happy ending to it of going through the hormone therapy. Take us through that.
Yeah, so everybody would tell me, the pharmacist told me that, my naturopath told me within 2 weeks you'll be feeling like a new person. It'll be great. And no, of course not.
Yeah.
So 2 weeks in, I was all excited, nothing. And I actually ended up getting worse before I got better,
Oof.
mentally anyways. Like
Yeah.
I went downhill mentally before I physically got better, and mentally better. And then I remember I went to my naturopath at about 3.5 months on it, or 2.5 months on it. And she says, Kelly, no, really, 3 months is the sweet spot. You've got to give it 2 more weeks. And I'm like, really, what is that going to do?
Yeah.
And between then and my next visit a month later, so somewhere at the 3.5 month mark, oh my God, it was amazing.
Oh my
Yeah, and it
goodness.
just got better from there. My joint pain went away, my brain started to come back, and I'd been struggling with that for far more than 2 years. Like that had been an ongoing
Yeah.
battle since the concussion, basically. And yeah, everything started getting better. It was just by January, it was almost like a completely different, I was almost back to my old self,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah. So it was amazing for me.
I'm glad that you were able to kind of stick it out until that moment, even with its
Yeah.
hard times and maybe wanting to just end it all. But you stuck it out. You listened to her, and then it had a good outcome on the other side of all of that. But
Hmm.
the business part of it, that's not light stuff to build something for so long and then see it kind of start being taken away from you, and not necessarily by choice either, because you just actually couldn't show up for it in that season, especially being the overachiever and seeing your worth tied to your output. I know that way too well. I feel like that can mess with your mindset in that moment as well, right?
Yeah, it was well, and it was my business and my career. So I had been at my job for 23 years and they were
Yeah.
completely unsupportive.
Ugh.
My doctor had put burnout and stress on the paperwork because he didn't know what it was, and I
Right.
guess didn't want to put anything menopause related on there. And so I think employers sometimes only have so much,
Yeah.
time for that. And I was struggling so much, and they were, sort of harassing me to come back, and I just couldn't. I just knew I couldn't. I wasn't able to do
Right.
so. I had the doctor's note, I had all the things, and this is what the hormones do to you. I just kind of gave up. I quit. I
Yeah.
said, I can't have this pressure anymore. And so, to be treated like that after 23 years at a place that you've given your entire life to,
Yeah.
that happened right as I was just starting the hormone therapy. So of course,
Oof.
things are
Yeah.
going on, and I call it my rage quit because I couldn't handle it anymore, all the pressure. So yeah, so 2 months after that, I still not back in the business. My team is still running it. Thank God for my team. But they're only paying themselves, and I'm putting money into the business to keep them paid because I'm not doing any coaching or consulting. So yeah, and I would say I did lose the business. Like I would
Yeah.
say that because it is not what it was before, and it's my team. The team's gone now, and I'm
Yeah.
sort of regrowing. So that part was really difficult, and I think a lot of women in menopause struggle with that, even without the complications of either losing your job or having to quit your job, and a business on the side. But women struggle with who am I if I'm not able to perform at the level
Oof.
I've performed for the last 30 years, right?
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
I'm guilty of
Hmm.
that as well, of who am I if I'm not able to perform to this level. And I actually just made a post about this today, of like realizing that for the past decade there has not been one year where I've just like sat down or not done something in life, or pregnancy and breastfeeding and all of those things, right? And it's like sometimes it hits you to realize, like I mentioned already, that worth being tied to the output is so dang hard to separate. And especially when you're going through health issues that are going to affect it, depression on top of it, financial struggles that are obviously going to come with that and naturally come with that. It's like it's a disaster waiting to happen inside. Add the hormones on top. It is, wow, kudos to you, and it shows your strength of how you were able to get through that season as well. So yeah,
Thank you.
congratulations on that one.
Thanks. Yeah. And the added pressure of the differences in your relationships. I isolated a lot, and I
Yeah,
know a lot of women do. So I lost a lot of friends throughout the journey of trying to figure out what was wrong with me, and sort of turtling inside. As I mentioned, we joke about it now, but in all seriousness,
yeah,
divorce was on the table in my mind, which is, I can't even believe it today. Like I
yeah,
would never think about it today. So it's scary when women don't know that there is a reason why they're thinking these things. And they do say the divorce rate even is the highest in the divorces caused by women or instigated by women is the highest between like 40 and 55 because of menopause.
right. All
Yeah,
those
you just feel
different
so out of
shifts,
control.
right.
Yeah, yeah, out of control in every area of your life almost. Yeah.
Now, I do see that this has shifted something internally for you, because it has changed your scope of work now, right? Like, what do you do now with the lessons that you learned during that season?
So when I went to go back to my business, which is all I had now, right? I didn't have the
Yeah,
career, so I had to become even something more in the business. And I was right in the middle of launching a big program for we're trying to, for financial consulting, and I just shut it down mid launch and just didn't feel it. I wasn't ready physically, mentally, and I'd lost the spark for it.
yeah,
And I ended up, taking more time off to continue to heal, but also to take my menopause coaching specialist certification, and then succeed, after that, my life and wellness certification, so that I can work with women who are entrepreneurs, but not just that, but high achieving women
yeah.
who are trying to navigate this transition and what comes next for them. So that is my burning passion now, which I would never have guessed, being an accountant for 30 years.
Right? You're like, okay, I did not know I was going to go into this route, but funny how life works out
Mm-mm.
sometimes.
Yeah, it
I feel
is.
like there's got to be such a difference in your body, in your energy, and how you show up now, though, because you've gone through it yourself. So how does that kind of translate into the work that you do now that you've gone through this?
So I
Yeah,
give women hope because a lot of people know what I've gone through. I'm very vocal about it so that I can, share with other women that if this is happening, it's not just you. So I'm really vocal about it. And they know all of the intricacies of the issues that I've had, whether it be with my career, with my business, with my life. And so I think I give them hope, and I show up with that hope because I truly believe that on the other side is something so much better. It sounds really
right.
weird and a little bit hokey, like a story. And I'm not saying I don't still have struggles. I just want to say I'm happy to say that I have an amazing menopause doctor now.
Yes.
It was 2 years after the start of my journey, I finally found her, and I'm so very grateful because we're still struggling to navigate a few issues. But for the most part, I am, happier than I've been in years. And I really do see, I turn 50 next year, and I really do see this as being one of the best years of my life. And so I think that if I can bring that hope to the table when I'm speaking to other women about, where they are in their journey, and just kind of help guide them through the tough times to get to the other side, that's my hope. And that's how I intend to show up for them.
I love that so much. And when I originally started to see your content pop up, I was like, ooh, menopause and the workforce and entrepreneurs and all of that. I was like, how does that correlate? But then it was like, well, duh, Kayla, of course it's going to correlate, because if you're going through health issues, how are you going to show up if you have these high achieving morals, if you have these beliefs about yourself of being able to show up through these health issues, like, of course, that's going to come up when you're going through things. And to have somebody there for you to be like, listen, I was there too. I know what it's like to have to connect all those dots. That's got to be such a special place to be able to be for other women.
It is. And, the reason why I kind of joined entrepreneurship and menopause is because my saying is kind of entrepreneurship is really lonely and menopause is really lonely. And together
Yeah.
it's, it can be the loneliest journey of your life because that's where I was. And, when I was going through it, because I didn't know what it was, I didn't have
Right.
anybody to talk to about it. And then even when I did, there really wasn't anybody talking about it. And so the first thing I do in my local area or even virtually is share with them, join a group so that you're not crazy.
Yes.
You're not a hypochondriac because you go to that group and there's going to be 50 women with 75 different symptoms. And I think that's one of the most important things is to realize you're not crazy, because I called myself crazy all the time and a hypochondriac. I even, said I had dementia, like I said, like it was
Right.
getting to this point where I was at the Alzheimer's office twice and they were like, honey, I'm sure that you don't, And so I think as soon as you start talking to people, as soon as I started getting vocal and I came out of my hole, and I started talking to all these other women that are going through it, it's like you can see them sort of just kind of like it's like a light comes on with them because
Yeah.
they just want to talk about it so that they know they're not alone. So I love that the conversation in the celebrity world is happening. I love that there's quite a few very famous doctors that are taking it on, and they're amazing. And it's going to change the future for women going through this, I hope anyways, so that
Yeah.
it's not something so awful and lonely for them.
Absolutely. I love what you said about the light, because I have this idea that I've talked about for years now of when people used to ask me why I was so vocal about postpartum depression and just these motherhood issues that maybe other people wouldn't say. I have this visual, and you just made me think of it with the light, of a candle. And when you burn it, the smoke is going up. But if you have another lit match and you put it into that smoke, it will actually light that wick again. And that's what we're doing in this sense, is people are sitting here burning
Mm.
out. They don't know what's going on. And here you
Mm-hmm.
come with this lit match of like, I know, I see you, etc. And you put it into their smoke, boom, they're lit up again. And they're like, oh, somebody gets me, somebody understands me. And I love that you get to be that voice for women now, and get to, shine some light on this topic.
I hope so. That is my hope. Too often it gets passed off on, as burnout, mental health, or stress.
Right.
Those three things, and those are such stigmas now in the workplace. And I don't know how I'm saying, like, I wouldn't say they get used a lot, but it gets used to diagnose people a lot.
Right.
And then you kind of feel shame about it, right? For me, it was like I felt shame about it because I thought, ooh, maybe I shouldn't have been working so hard in my business in the nights, and then I wouldn't be so
Yeah.
tired. And so then you start to feel badly about yourself because you've burnt yourself out, even though that's
Right.
not really the way it works. So I think that separating that whole world from the menopause world is super important for women. And so I'm like you. I feel like the more we talk about it, the more it becomes not a shameful thing. Right? It's
Right.
weird. a lot of people are like, "Oh, we're going down the menopause road again today, are we?"
You're
My
like,
daughter's 18
yes,
and the
we
poor
are.
girl. Yeah. Yes, we are. And you'll never stop talking about it.
I love that. I feel like now would be the greatest time to ask you, for the women who are still in that fog, what do you want them to know about menopause beyond the symptoms? Like, what is the message that you wish someone would have told you earlier?
That there is treatment, and not just hormone therapy. There is real treatment and real things that you can do, and people that you can talk to that won't just throw medicine at the situation or brush you off. That there is a lot of treatment options, and those treatment options, for me, it was life changing. And I've heard that
Yeah.
from other women too. But mostly advocate for yourself to get better and just persevere, because I believe, and on the other side, like it really is, you come out of it with this, I call it the F it 40s, I probably
Oh, I
should,
love it.
or F it 50s. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where you just don't, you're not as worried about what other people think of you. You're not as worried about saying yes to everything you have to say yes to because you haven't been able to. But the freeingness of that, I don't think that's a word, but when you're out of it and you're healthy and you could say yes and you don't, and it's just freeing. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't need to have 80 friends that aren't super close to me. I don't need to go out every Friday and Saturday night or whatever that you were doing before that you felt, you had to do. It's like you're more comfortable with yourself and more content. For me, sometimes I'm just content just to be here and be happy. I'll sometimes say to my husband, I'm just happy today. Because I
Yeah.
never had those days for 2 years. So it gives you, it allows you to feel a little more free and a little less, bowing down to everybody else, if that makes sense.
I love it. After
Yeah.
the F at 40s and F at 50s, you can move on to the screw at 60s.
Oh, I love it. Oh my gosh. That's great. That's great.
I was like, wait,
And
what
70s.
would it be? Yes, exactly, right? It works for everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my
Well, I
goodness.
used to always say my nana, we used to always say, like people would say, you're the young version of your nana. That's what you're going to be like because she just has, she'll just say whatever she wants, whenever
I
she
love
wants.
it.
And I think I'm going to get there earlier than Nana. Yeah. I'm just going to do what I want, say what I want, and be what I want because, it's just so much better to be comfortable with who you are and stop chasing that
Yeah.
whatever title, house, whatever it is that you're chasing, because at the end, I sort of get to this point in my life and I'm like, I'm sort of living like I was almost more in my early 30s, right? I gave up the big house, I gave up the big job, I gave up all the things, and I'm loving it. So yeah,
I love that.
look forward to it is what I say. Yeah, tell them to look forward to it.
I feel like older people can get such a bad rep because they're so brutally honest, but I love it. I'm like, I wish we could all kind of just like say what we're thinking sometimes. I mean, I was just at a doctor's office recently and this older man's like trying to explain and she's like, and birthday? And he was like, I already told you that. And I was like, you just called her out for not listening. So,
Yeah.
it comes with some pros.
I think for me, it's not as much what I say vocally. It's more how I used to be, maybe be hard on myself or berate myself for not doing what other people thought I should.
Yeah.
And now I'm just comfortable with my own decisions and my own actions. And I don't worry about that, what other people think anymore. But I feel like I will get to that point where I am saying whatever is in there.
The shift started externally and then it became internal. So I love that.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
So where can everyone find you, your work, connect with you outside of this podcast episode?
Oh, well, thanks for asking. So I'm still running Profit and Lattes as my business coaching business. So I have a number of things that I do for women who are first starting out. It's focused mostly on women that are becoming coaches or consultants later in life and maybe aren't so up on the technology piece of things or how to start a business online. So that's still there, and that is always going to be there because that's a big passion of mine. And then I call myself the menopausal entrepreneur. So on Instagram, you can find me either under Profit and Lattes or under the menopausal entrepreneur. Same with Facebook, and of course on LinkedIn under my own name. And that's where I share all my real stories and all the good stuff is on LinkedIn.
I love the name Profits and Lattes because that definitely goes hand in hand where it's like, oh yeah, I need a good coffee to get me through this first. To energize me for this.
Kayla, yeah, I didn't pick that, and I picked that name I actually rebranded right as I went down. So the business never actually became what it was rebranded for, but it's fitting, isn't it? Like, profits and lattes. So women in their, 40s plus, still navigating all the things, can do it with ease. And I like how it kind of just came together like that.
I love that. Well, I want to thank you for taking the time to sit down and be that light, talk about this very important conversation, open the doors for other women who might be like, whoa, maybe these things that I've been experiencing, I'm not so crazy. Somebody else gets it. So I love that you can be that for other women. And more importantly, you can also do that for the Shift Happens podcast audience. So thank you so much.
Thanks for asking me to be here, Kayla. I've enjoyed my time with you. Appreciate it.